Well, thank you, Kathleen and Rob and Wendy and Jareen for co-hosting and bringing all these people together. I really appreciate it. Barb, is Jennifer still here? Jennifer Carnahan?
Hi.
Okay, well, Jennifer, the chair of the party, and Barb, the secretary of the party, are here to support this campaign, and they've been great, and so thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't had a chance to meet my wife Sandy and my best friend Sandy, please, I hope you get a chance to do that. She's awesome. So let me give you a quick update on the campaign. Some of you I know well, others of you I'm just meeting tonight, so thank you for being here. We have been literally going nonstop for 14 months now. And we just got back a couple hours ago from southeastern Minnesota. We were down there for 2 days in the RV. And my strategy is very different from Tim Pawlenty's, who's my primary opponent. His strategy is raise as much money as you can, spend it on television, and do not engage voters because you might get asked a really difficult question. And mine is just the opposite. Well, I still want to raise as much money as I can, but it is to get out and talk to people and to actually engage voters face to face, not in 10-second media bites. But I want to be able to look them in the eye and ask them what's going on in their lives and then tell them how we're going to change Minnesota. And that is so rewarding for me. And it gives me so much encouragement because Minnesotans across the political spectrum are so ready for change right now. Actually, I am shocked at how engaged voters are at this point. This was not the case 4 years ago. And I don't know why it is. It might be a little bit of the Trump factor. It might be a little bit of the Pawlenty factor. It might be something else. But people are paying more attention to this race by a lot than they were 4 years ago at this time, and that is good news for me.
It might be you.
And it might be you. And I talk to these people, and some of them are Republicans and some aren't, but they work so hard to make a living and provide for their families, and they deserve so much better than what they're getting in this state from this government right now. And that's kind of what keeps me going, because I want to give them a state where average, everyday, hardworking people, not just rich people, but everybody gets to keep more of what they earn and spend on their own families, and where small business owners actually can run their business without all this interference from people in government who think they know how to run businesses better, but have never done it a day in their lives. And I think people deserve a government where we are actually enforcing the rule of law, and where we are arresting violent protesters and banning sanctuary cities, where we're supporting our cops in the street and actually letting them do the job that we are paying them for. And they deserve a state where we have, I truly believe we should have the strongest safety net in America for our most vulnerable citizens. Where we're proud of that, because it's who we are as Minnesotans, but where we have infused that safety net with a work requirement for people who are able to work. Not to punish them somehow, but because work is just intrinsically good. And it is the only surefire way to help people out of poverty, because that's what we want for everybody. And I think it's crazy that I even have to say this, but they deserve a state where we're not just addressing the incompetence that we're seeing in government right now, Minshew and Min-Lars, and I could go on down the list, but where we're actually calling out and rooting out the corruption. There is actual corruption in our government. It's not just happening at the federal level. And I could give you a lot of examples, but the most recent one is the child care fraud that we've seen. $100 million that has been built from the taxpayers with essentially fake child care centers. And the DHS, the Department of Human Services, says, well, we didn't know anything about that. That's ridiculous. Of course they did. This is the same agency that is literally regulating small daycare providers out of business because they're using the wrong plunger in their bathroom, and they claim they didn't notice $100 million that was shipped to Somalia. Somebody knew about it. Somebody turned a blind eye. Somebody should go to jail. And I think it's time that we actually call that out and start doing something. And then I'll just wrap up with this, because this is what I talk about more than anything else. We deserve to have a state where we have changed the culture in state government, from that of controlling and directing and telling everybody how they ought to live their lives to actually serving the people who pay their salaries. That is not happening right now. So we will clean house in our state agencies because that's the only way to change that culture. And my goal is to give people their government back. And that's what I will wake up every single morning to do as your governor. A quick update on the race. Donna Bergstrom and I were endorsed 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago up in Duluth. It was one of the most united conventions I can ever remember having. We left there in a really positive place. Now we're in the middle of a tough primary against Tim Pawlenty. But I feel really good about where we're at. Tim isn't doing much, and we're working our tails off. And I tell people that this primary is about the heart and soul of our party. Who controls our party going forward? Are we a party of the establishment, political elite, and their money and their influence, because that's who's pushing Tim? Or are we still a party controlled by conservative grassroots Republicans, the ones who endorsed us, and millions more like them all over the state? And I believe we're still a grassroots party. And I think if we actually act like that on August 14th in this primary, that is the difference between winning and losing in November. Because we will win in November if everyday, hardworking Minnesotans, the forgotten men and women in this state, believe that our candidate will fight for them over the political elite. We will not win if they think this is just more of the same. And that is the choice we have between Tim Pawlenty and me. I think it's a choice between winning and losing. And you know, I said it was a hill to climb, and it is, without question. But it's a climbable hill, and what I need to do, he's going to outspend me, I know that. They're starting tomorrow on TV. They did a $50,000 media buy starting tomorrow. We'll be on TV. We'll be on TV in a much smaller way. We'll be on radio. We'll spend money on digital. But I'm not going to win because of money, and neither is he. I'm going to win because of a grassroots army on the ground who is sharing that message, and that is what I ask. I need your money, so thank you for that. But I also need you to put a bumper sticker on your car and put a lawn sign up in your yard and volunteer either for the party or for our campaign to make phone calls, and then talk to everyone you know every single day about this race. Because most people don't pay attention to primaries. Tell them there's a primary, tell them why you're voting, and encourage them to do the same. Open voting, or early voting has already started. You just go to your city hall. And I think if we can get enough people engaged in this grassroots army, all the money in the world is not going to make any difference on the other side. We'll win in August and again in November. So thank you all so much. I'm happy to take a few questions, or if there are comments or advice on the campaign, I would love that. So any questions or thoughts?
Light rail.
Say that again?
Light rail, you want to make it go away?
Yeah. Light rail was the question. Yeah, I want to make it go away. So I fight this fight every day on the county board because light rail is a religion amongst my colleagues, and I'm in the 6-to-1 minority on this one. But light rail and commuter rail, and now streetcars, which are the new darling of the left, they're kind of cool and they're kind of European, but they are totally an efficient way of getting people around. And so we could have the best world-class bus system in the world for a fraction of this cost, and we could serve people better with that. And I'm comfortable with that, but we need to start spending more of our transportation dollars on what we rely on, which are roads and bridges.
Well, so then in other words, are you opposed to any light rail? Because unless, well, Matt Parsons was one that asked years ago. He said he was in favor of it.
Yeah.
And I drew a piece of paper. I took a piece of paper and I drew 2 circles, and I said that represents Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I said then I took drew a line like the freeway all the way around, and then put a bunch of fingers on it. I said if you can build it like that, it'll work.
Yeah.
But I said then I drew a line. I said this one line cost $1 billion.
Right. And
so
and
unless you do that, it's worthless.
Right. And the current line is going to cost about $2.2 billion.
Right.
I will not move forward with light rail. Now, the way they've got it set up is the state doesn't need to be part of that. It's all being funded by the federal government and the locals. But I certainly will not be involved as a governor in signing anything that would move forward with light rail, just because it is such an inefficient use of money, and the cost to subsidize it every year to keep moving is tremendous. And we can be spending that on something that works.
It's 19th century.
That's right.
Technology.
That's exactly right.
19 cents is what?
19th century. It's a 19th century technology.
Yep. John?
So is there any chance of a debate with you and Tim Pawlenty?
The question was whether there's any chance of a debate. There's a chance, but it's not good. We have proposed a bunch. He has come to one event with me in the, 6 weeks, 8 weeks he's been in the race, and that was a behind closed doors event with the Freedom Club. We were supposed to be on CCO tomorrow for an hour, and he backed out. So, but they're going to keep me on for an hour, so I'll take it. And we proposed a bunch of others. I mean, I think the Chamber wants to do one, and I think the Minnesota Business Partnership wants to do one. I think he's going to have trouble saying no to those two. So let's hope they'll open them up so media can actually come in. And then we're going to propose, or the party actually might be proposing 2 or 3 others. And, you know, he will say no, but I honestly, I do not believe you can win in August, and I know you can't win in November if you're unwilling to engage voters. It used to work. It just doesn't. Donald Trump changed that fundamentally, and thank God he did, because people ought to know where you stand on things.
What time is the CCO tomorrow?
I think it's at 9. I
Okay.
think I'm on from 9 to 10, or it might be 9:30 to 10:30. Bloise Olson is actually substitute hosting for whoever is during that time. Yeah.
It's radio?
On the radio, CCO.
John Hines.
What time is
John
your
Hines.
CCO? 10? Okay.
I thought it was 9. Are you sure it's not 9? It's 10? I thought it was at 10. Okay. Sometime in the morning. What's that? Okay. Then that's right.
And Bloise is a Democrat.
Bloise is a Democrat, but he's always been fair. Yeah. Yeah, I think he'll be fine.
Well, I agree with you. I think Tim Lenny left the state years ago, and he thinks it's still that state, and
Yes.
it's not.
And it's
That's
not.
what
He has changed and the state has changed. Yes. Yeah, Dale.
Are you going to be able to hold these departments to at least a 10% cut in their budgets? Because everybody knows that the budgets just go up, and nobody's income is going up anywhere near what the budgets are going up, and I would bet there's 20% in each department's budget that is frivolous or pork or poorly spent.
So we have seen a 53% increase in state spending in the last 8 years. And then the 8 years before that, with the plenty years, was not nearly as big an increase, but it increased 7 of the 8 years. And we would celebrate a 3 or 4% increase instead of an 8 or 10. We are past that time. We can't be celebrating small increases just because the Democrats want more. And I don't know if it's 10%, I don't know if it's 20%. I think each department's probably a little different depending on what they do and how well they're doing it. But there is plenty of room to actually cut spending. I have made it crystal clear in the Star Tribune that I will veto any spending bill that's larger than the last. We are going to actually cut spending. And I haven't put out a proposal and won't until after the election, because we won't know what the forecast is. But yeah, there's plenty of room. We'll treat each department differently though, because some are doing more important things than others. There are some that shouldn't even be around. Right.
How about state money expenditures being spent in the state?
What do you mean?
Years ago, I was in the printing business, and our pull tab and printing was being
Oh, okay.
shipped
Yep, I know what
across
you mean.
the border
Yep.
to Wisconsin
Yep.
when we had incredible printers in this
Yep.
state. Well, whether it's a penny less or a nickel less, where's the money going to go back? If we ship it to Wisconsin, that tax money isn't coming back.
Yeah,
if
we
we
actually-
support businesses in Minnesota, it comes back.
We actually put that in the jobs proposal that we put out, not a requirement that you do that, but that we're going to put incentives in so that government is buying within the state. I mean, if there's a huge difference in cost, I'm going to worry about the taxpayers, but if we can encourage to buy locally, then we ought to do that, absolutely.
It makes reasonable sense.
Exactly. Yes.
So for the gray fringe millennials, like myself, I just got work done so you can't really see the gray, that are trying to figure out where they align now. I've been a multi-party voter
Yep.
for as long as I've been able to vote. What are some of the key talking points that you
Yep.
bring up for millennial voters that can be swayed either way, or that have interests that are typically beyond what your traditional conservative
Yep.
party would?
Well, and what I have found about a lot of millennials is they could care less what you call yourself. They don't care what your party is. They don't care if you're conservative or liberal, and might not even know what that means. They just want to know what you're going to do. And so the party stuff is almost irrelevant to a lot of millennials. And the biggest thing that I talk about with millennials is I want you to make decisions about your own life. I do not want government to tell you what your health insurance should look like, where you should go to school, whether you can use Uber or not. I mean, the left, they're trying to drive, the sharing economy is a huge deal for a lot of millennials, and the left is trying to regulate it, and they're going to regulate it out of business in some areas.